Rebel Force Radio presents
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
This is the RFR Mandalorian After Show.
Oh, special edition. Yeah, Mandalorian After Show special edition. Chut, everybody. Nice to be back with you, and so soon. I don't think we knew that it would be so soon after the Bad Batch after shows wrapped up, but here we are, and you know, it takes a big event to get us to do one of these things. It's got to be like a new, fresh episode of a Star Wars series, and or something even more special, which is a tradition. This is a long tradition for Star Wars fans, is to get that sneak peek behind the scenes. I mean, Star Wars was probably the most... It pioneered this behind-the-scenes thing that eventually became popularized with DVD and the whole home video market and stuff like that. I mean, Star Wars fans were looking at the making of Star Wars before it was I guess you could say, the thing to do. And I thought this special... By the way, it's got the longest title of any TV show. The Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian, Making of Season 2 Finale. I mean, that's a mouthful, but it was I thought, definitely in the same league as so many of the other incredible behind-the-scenes features and documentaries that we've seen over the last 40-some years. Really, really cool stuff. So we're so happy to be with you tonight live as we take a look at this. Because I think that there's a lot of things that to discuss. I mean, there's obviously the technology, but I think bigger is, what does this mean? What does this mean for the future of the Mandalorian series? What does it mean for the Star Wars franchise? We'll break all of that down and more, plus your phone calls, all coming up here in the next hour and a half or so. So stay tuned and make sure that you call in. We know that with these types of shows, there's a lot more people watching than are willing to call in, but we love to get first-time callers. We also love our regulars, but if you're a first-time caller, and especially if you're a Patreon supporter, we'd love to hear from you. So make sure you do that. And I know one other person that would love to hear from you, and that's, of course, my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. We're happy to have you guys back for a Mandalorian after show where today we learned all the tricks that were incorporated in bringing Luke Skywalker back to life in The Mandalorian. And it certainly was it was quite the it was revelatory. That's the word I'm looking for, Jason. Revelatory.
Yes.
Revelatory.
And we
reveled. It was. I mean, there were just a lot of cool things
of it.
Yeah, there were a lot of cool things that were revealed to us as the curtain was pulled back. So I'm looking forward to talking all about that. I also want to talk with you guys about maybe you have some predictions about what's going to happen in Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Maybe you want to vent a little bit about the potential changing of Boba Fett's ship's name from Slave 1 to Fire Spray, if that actually is happening. We have received some... strong inclination that that's already in the works, that the Slave 1 name is toast. And I actually have a way that they can actually work that into storytelling canon. And I think it would be effective. So we'll talk about that later in the show. But I think just to get us started, Jason, you and me, we're going to pick apart the Disney Gallery Mandalorian special that started screening today.
Yeah.
And talk about some highlights and some of those revelatory moments.
Yes, and I'm going to put the phone number up here so you can get in the queue to call. It is... Where is that number? Aha, here it is, 708-866-1737. So if you're within the sound of our voices here and you're watching us live on YouTube, give us a call, 708-866-1737. And, of course, our wonderful call screener and the official program observer here at RFR is ready to take your calls, Mr. Tyler Page. And what's great about Tyler being here tonight is he's not alone. He has a special assistant that he showed us just before we went live. Tyler, if you would, check this out.
Got Little baby Grogu helping me out today.
Little baby Grogu holding it's an iPhone holder. So you are the call screener, and how appropriate that Grogu is helping you out there. Baby Yoda be the official screener of calls. So like I said, give Tyler a ring and let him know what you want to talk about, and we will pop you on. Special preference to Patreon members and first-time callers, of course, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. So, Jim, Star Wars fans are no stranger to this kind of treatment. I mean, if you were a fan of another franchise, it would be a rare thing maybe to get this kind of in-depth look at the making of the whole series, perhaps, or of a whole season on a home video box set. Let alone, I mean, an examination of not even the whole episode. Really, when you think about it, there was very little talk about the episode in general terms, the storytelling that was involved. It was all about recreating Luke Skywalker, for 42, 43 minutes or whatever it was. So, I mean, if that's not Star Wars, I don't know what is, when they can zoom in. You know, if you remember some of those old documentaries, like from where they took like a minute of film. I think this was on the Revenge of the Sith home video release, where they followed a minute of film all the way through from shooting it to the way it ended up in the final film. So again, Star Wars has been doing this, peeling back the curtain for many, many years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think back to the old making of Star Wars video that was narrated by William Conrad, and the fact that they didn't dumb this down makes me really, really happy. I mean, there was a moment when Favreau started talking about blockchains and chain codes and stuff.
Oh,
I don't think I had no idea what the hell he was saying. I had no idea what he was talking about with Boba Fett and the chain codes, and he just made no sense to me. He ended up talking about like Twitter verifications and stuff. Yeah, there's check marks.
It is interesting because I didn't think he was going to go there, but where he went was, essentially what he was saying is we're living in a world where it's very difficult to tell reality from, real from fake. And it's because of digital technology and blockchaining. I'm certainly not an expert in it, but it allows you to essentially create a unique identifier of that, whatever that thing is. So if it's a photo of you that's on the internet, there is a unique code so that every time it's being used, you know that that's what the photo is, and that so you could potentially follow it. They're using it a lot for ticketing so that you can actually follow the transfer of tickets for events. And now that ticketing is a mobile thing. So yeah, I mean, you can see how in the wrong hands, and they certainly don't pull any punches on that, in the wrong hands, this technology could be very dangerous. And they you're right. I mean, it's really an examination of this technology that they used. One of the things I couldn't believe was that they sort of did a pro and con, or took you along the ride for their own weighing the pros and cons of 3 different types of technologies that they looked at for this. The narrative was, why didn't they just deep fake? It's like, well, they looked at that, guys,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did. And they certainly used a lot of Mark Hamill reference from over the years, and it sounded like they're loaded up and ready to go with deep fake technology, but I just don't think it was quite there where they wanted it to be to bring back Mark Hamill, Luke Skywalker. I just don't think it was there. So they relied on more CGI technology, de-aging.
Yeah, the de-aging
It seems
thing.
like they mixed up. It seems like they mixed everything in, because it wasn't only Mark, but it was another actor named Max.
Yeah, they never gave Max his last name, did they? I
They
was
didn't
going to look
even
that
say
up.
his last name.
It was just
I
Max.
was just trying to look it up. I saw it earlier today. It was,
And I'm wondering if Max
Van
is
Halen
real.
or something.
Is Max real?
Yeah.
Or was Max deep
But
faked?
once seeing Max on stage in the Luke Skywalker wardrobe and everything, it truly looked like that was more of the source that they used to bring back Luke. I was just getting vibes of Max
Yeah.
Once I got to know him in the final Luke Skywalker special effect.
Yeah, no, there's no question. It feels like all of the shots from him from behind, you could tell the hairline, you could tell the shape of the head, all of that stuff. Yeah, that was definitely Max. And I think that what Mark was really there to do, and they don't come right out and say it, but you read between the lines, Mark was there to show Max how to be Luke Skywalker. That's really what it was.
Right. Yes. But they did mask Mark Hamill's facial expressions onto Max. Max Lloyd Jones is the guy's full name. And he appeared in movies like War for the Planet of the Apes, and he's from Canada. He's Canadian.
All right.
So there, now you know a little bit about
Max Lloyd Jones.
But,
all right. Yeah. Well, he does have a very Hamill quality about him. There's no question about that. But in the same way that we've seen, Peter Mayhew involved in the making of the Clone Wars when they needed to bring Chewie to life and they wanted to study his walk. I mean, it's these little intangibles, and Filoni talks about that actually in the documentary quite a bit, where he sort of breaks down that it's multiple things. He goes, yeah, just the face isn't going to sell it, but it's the gestures, the movements, the body language, the music, the lighting. He really talks about how it's all of those things that came together to create this moment. I also love when he talked about how deliberate they were. I suppose you could say deliberate, but whether that was the intention or not, it certainly was the consequence of, because he described exactly how I felt. You're in denial the whole time. You see the X-Wing, you still don't believe it. You see the cloak, you still don't believe it. You don't believe it fully, even after you see the green lightsaber. You don't believe it fully until the hood comes down and it's Luke Skywalker. Yeah. And it was cool that they acknowledged that, and it sounds like that was, by design. And the lengths that they went through to keep this secret was just incredible. Even on set, it was very much an I am your father kind of thing.
Yeah. Even down to the point where they had Plo Koon as a placeholder, as a code name for Luke Skywalker in the script. And we have some of Peyton Reed and Dave Filoni talking about, well, actually, let's just start with this clip of Peyton Reed, clip 6. Peyton Reed not cut 6. I'm sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. Cut 2, Peyton Reed, when he learned Luke was going to be in The Mandalorian. Let's hear that clip.
I remember John gave me the script for the season finale episode, and I read it, and I loved it. It had a lot of action. It had a lot of great character stuff and a lot of emotion. But there was a character that came in at the end of it, and in the script it was written as a character called Plo Koon. And I knew Plo Koon was a Jedi, I think, from the prequel trilogy, and I was like, well, how are we visualizing this? And he said, come over here in the corner, I want to talk to you. And he gave me the real news that it was in fact not Plo Koon, but it was going to be Luke. And I needed a moment. And I needed to know, because I've had a long relationship with John, and I said, are you being serious right now? Is this real? You're bringing the guy back? And he said, we're bringing the guy back.
We're bringing the guy back.
The guy. And Reed and Filoni then went on to talk a little bit about what they did to even ensure that Plo Koon was fully going to be accepted by anyone who might have looked at the script and might have leaked the information.
We had to keep Mark a secret. And that went from creating misleads in the script, creating artwork that was not Luke, creating some temporary visual effects that were the character of Plo Koon.
It's fairly well known by deep core fans that Plo Koon's my favorite Jedi. And a lot of people, if Plo Koon from the script got out, would assume, well, of course, because Dave likes Plo Koon. So, there's these layers of intrigue that we try to weave. We had a digital Plo Koon head placed on the actor in dailies, so it looked like Plo Koon.
How disappointed would we have been if this was it? He pulls off the cloak, and what would be great is if the cloak, didn't even give away the fact that it was like a ginormous head with all kinds of tendrils and things. He just pulls it back, and it's Plo Koon. Oh my God!
Really? Yeah, he flies in the lightsaber. He has the one black glove with the green saber. He flies in in the X-wing. I'm sorry, and he's got the glove and the saber and then Plo Koon. He even does like the Luke.
Yeah,
where he kind of.
Yeah, Luke
does that. He does that. He does that in the Mandalorian, just like he did in The Force Awakens, where it's like.
Yeah,
he does a little peek.
Yeah, but see that again. That's a good detail, Jim, that you picked up on, because that's the Hamill. So you got Max Lloyd. Yeah, you got Max Lloyd Jones maybe doing it in the final edit, but that's the Hamill. He does that little peek. You're right. He does that little peek. It would have been totally different if he wouldn't have been able to learn, from the master, the Jedi master himself there on the set. Before we go to our calls, I do want to, it's a love fest. It was 42 great minutes. I loved it. I really would have liked to have seen them open up the canvas a little bit more on this documentary to have it be a true kind of look at the entire making of the final episode. Perhaps had a little bit more in there with Pedro and the rest of the cast. It would have been great to hear a little bit more from them, and because it's not just about Luke Skywalker, it is about, and Jon Favreau sort of mentions this, that it's the end of this 2-season arc about this child's journey. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, is he telegraphing something here? Is this potentially, maybe not the end, but is this the end for a bit of the adventures of Grogu and the Mando?
Yeah. That landed on me the same way it did with you.
Yeah.
Where I was like, wow, Favreau's really speaking in final terms here. But also during the entire special, ideas are racing through my head about how they can bring back more Luke in the future in Star Wars.
Yep.
Be it in films or streaming series. And Mark Hamill talked a little bit about being surprised that he was being brought back because he was expecting the adventures of Luke to be played by someone else. And that's
when they went from the original trilogy to the sequels. Obviously, there's this huge gap in time where there's all these untold stories. But I just assumed they'd get an age-appropriate actor, and I didn't really think about it all that much. I just thought, if they want to tell stories of Luke post Return of the Jedi, I wonder who they'll get. When they said they were going to use the de-aging process they used in the Marvel movies, I was just gobsmacked. I didn't answer right away. I had to think about it, but the more I thought about it, I thought this is like really an opportunity that was completely unexpected, but something that almost was a responsibility. In other words, if they're saying they want me to do this, how can I say no?
Exactly.
Something else.
We're looking at some photos of Mark in his backyard holding Baby Yoda dressed in the Jedi robes. Yeah, so the lightsaber. They reveal that Peyton Reed and Dave Filoni, they show up at Mark's house, and they're sitting with Mary Lou at the table while Mark's in his office reading the script and making a determination. And once he said yes, I guess the conversation shifted to, well, we brought the suit. It's in the trunk if you want. And I guess they put it on. This was quite a sales pitch. They brought him the suit, they brought him the saber, and they brought him Baby Yoda, like right to his house. Yeah. Hamill's no pushover, and he leaves them hanging. We know this from his negotiations for the sequel trilogy. He was the last one to sign on to it. Everyone thought Harrison would be the big holdout. Harrison signed as soon as he heard about it. Carrie Fisher she practically jumped into George Lucas's lap when he brought up the idea of the sequel trilogy to her. And Mark even commented, no, don't Carrie, stop it. Stop. As soon as George brought up the idea of a sequel trilogy, Carrie's like, I'm in. And Mark's like, what are you doing? So he's the holdout. And, of course, he wants to take a look at the script. Diana is wondering if Mary Lou served blue milk while they were waiting for Mark to read the script. That would have been pretty... I
think Mark only drinks blue milk.
Would that have been meta? I don't know. Some form of meta.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, so Mark left him hanging, and he's sitting in his office reading it, knowing full well that he wants to do it because he was really excited about the idea of the de-aging technology.
Yeah. The de-aging technology.
Anyone de-age me, if they wanted to de-age you, how could you not be excited about something like that?
Yeah, I really was very happy about how transparent they seemed to be about the different types of technologies that they were looking at. And admittedly, I think they went with, even through the lens of this documentary, when they showed some of the deep fake stuff that was being sort of played around with, it did look cleaner. It looked crisper. It looked more real. But the de-age, because the de-aging, they even talk about it, it's almost like airbrushing. It airbrushes things out. So there's a softness to it that, what was the Irishman? I think it was The Irishman, the movie with De Niro, where De Niro spends, I believe, most of the film de-aged, if not the entire film. I haven't seen it. But
I didn't see it.
It's like 3 or 4 hours long, and I believe he does spend a good deal of it. The third option that they looked at was complete recreation, and that's what they did for Tarkin in Rogue One. So they looked at all three of these. So I sort of respect that they didn't necessarily, they had their reasons with why they chose the technology that they chose. I don't think it's the obvious choice when you look at them all stacked up. But Jim, you were right. You said something about, the technology might not have been there. Keep in mind, this was 2019. So, I mean, a couple of years can make a big difference in technology like that is emerging so quickly. So, but let's take some calls here. Actually, first of all, I do want to, got a couple of super chats. Eric from Phoenix, our buddy, he started things off tonight with, I haven't had a chance to watch the video, and we'll miss the live stream. Have a great time. I miss chatting with all of you. Oh, that's a shame. We'll forgive you this once, Eric, for not doing your homework. And then we got Jeff here. Thank you, Jeff. Chut. Gonna miss the live show, but wanted to say, love this ep of Disney Galleries. If we needed any more proof that John and Dave get it when it comes to making great Star Wars. Boy, does it ever. I mean, it's impossible. And I know I'm going to make some people mad here, but it's impossible to watch this 42 minutes. Impossible to watch it and listen to John and listen to Dave and listen to Peyton Reed, and particularly Peyton Reed, and not sit there and look at this photo or any of these photos and say, hey, JJ, hey, Rian Johnson, this right here, this is all you had to do. This is all you had to do. And you overthought it, and you underthought the other parts that you overthought, or that you didn't overthink, and you gave us what you gave us. And I think, and I know people get tired of hearing about this, but it's things like this when you hear, Peyton Reed talking about, we had to really figure it out. We knew how important this character was to people. And you had the visual effects. I don't have her name in front of me, but she was one of the visual effects supervisors, I believe. And she was great. And she was saying, it was Luke. That was their priority. That was their focus. And for considering that Kathleen Kennedy's, hook to J.J. Abrams was this question, who is Luke Skywalker? It seems like they answered it a hell of a lot better in Mandalorian, and at least they were dealing with it, the question, a heck of a lot better behind the scenes of this show than they were the sequel trilogy. So anyway.
I still maintain Kathleen Kennedy was asking that of Jon Favreau because she had no idea who
J.J. Abrams
was. Who did I say?
Jon Favreau.
Oh, I meant J.J. Abrams. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My brain's all over the place. I can't stop thinking about your birthday tomorrow, Swank. I
was waiting for you to bring it up because
yeah, yeah, you were busting at the seams, waiting for me to bring it up. So hey, everyone, if you're listening and you have a beverage at hand, why don't we hoist up a toast? I happen to have some Skywalker Ranch Cab Sav here.
Well, hold on, I don't have anything. Hold on.
This is a healthy pour. How does Jason not have a beverage? This is a first, ladies and gentlemen, and in a couple of ways. Jason didn't bring up his birthday unprovoked, and he doesn't have an adult beverage at his side.
I finished one, so I forgot to set the bottle.
Already started celebrating.
I forgot to put the bottle close enough.
Already started.
Hey, you want to know something funny
Jason
about your
Swank?
Oh.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, my mom posted on Facebook, "Happy birthday" today.
Yeah.
It's not my birthday today. Mom got it wrong.
Even your mom.
My own mom got it wrong. Oh well.
Well, she's obviously drinking already too. So. Here, happy birthday to you,
thank
Jason.
you very much.
And God bless you. You're a son of 77, just like Star Wars. And we appreciate everything you do here on Rebel Force Radio. Cheers and Solantia.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
That's good. That's good. Yum.
That is good. What do you say?
So I hope everyone out there, they're lighting up the chat with happy birthday greetings for Swank. Somebody says he needs my hairstylist. Are you already drinking, sir? I mean, there's a reason I'm wearing a hat today. Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us here on Jason's birthday special. This is the RFR Jason birthday after show, pre-show.
See, here's the thing. You got to understand this. You got to understand this about Jimmy Mack is unless you're releasing the show on the whatever, whether it's a birthday or a holiday or something, he doesn't want you to talk about it. I've learned this over the last 15 years. And so I texted him yesterday. I said, "Hey, is it okay if I show up sloppy drunk for my birthday podcast or something like that?" And he's like, "Well, tomorrow's not your birthday." Well, I know, but I mean, it's close. It's real close. He's like, "But it's not your birthday."
Yeah.
So anyway, well, I appreciate you bringing it up.
Save that for tomorrow.
Okay, first time, long time. We got Ben from Louisiana calling in here. Let's hear what Ben has to say. Hello, Ben. You're on with Rebel Force Radio, talking Mandalorian.
Ben!
Oh. Hey, Chut.
Chut.
Hey, Ben.
Oh my gosh, I'm talking to Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack from Rebel Force Radio for the very first time, baby.
Congrats. Bucket list, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So let's talk
guys.
Mandalorian.
I absolutely really enjoyed that new Disney Gallery featurette about how they did that deep fake technology they did on Luke.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was pretty neat. I'm kind of surprised they didn't actually mention that YouTuber who claimed he did a far better job, that all of a sudden out of the blue got hired at Lucasfilm. What do you know?
Yeah, I think it has to do. I would say it probably has to do with the fact, Ben. It seems like maybe this was recorded before that hire had occurred.
Yeah. That hire happened this year.
But they certainly didn't skirt around the deep fake question. That's for sure.
Yeah. Shamook is the guy's name. Deep fake YouTuber who goes by the name Shamook has been hired by Industrial Light and Magic to work on things like this effect we're talking about of Luke Skywalker and the Mandalorian, de-aging the characters, what have you. Either that or he's working on the next Plo Koon project, whatever that might be.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to add a little bit of my own personal Star Wars history, if you guys don't mind.
Go for it.
I was first introduced to Star Wars. I was born back in 1990, and obviously 13 years prior, Star Wars came out. My mom and dad actually got to go see Star Wars back when they were dating in the 70s. They got married about a year later, and I remember that story, that great story they told me about the first time they went to go see Star Wars. They were sitting in the car one night. They heard about Star Wars, and they knew it was pretty good. And one night when they were dating, Mom asked my dad, "What do you want to do?" And Dad's like, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" It always kind of reminded me of that scene from I think it was Disney's The Jungle Book. Remember those vultures? Like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do?
What'd they end up doing?
They went to go see Star Wars that very night. I think it was around August of that year. And they actually came in. They actually came in a little bit late. They actually came in right at the part where R2-D2 got zapped by the Jawas. I know Jason.
Still got there earlier than I did the first time I saw it.
The oil bath scene, right?
Until 3PO was being lowered into the oil bath. That's when I got there. I saw Jawa getting shot by R2 getting shot by the Jawas. I saw that on TV on a commercial or something. And this is when I'd only seen the film once. And I got there when 3PO was being lowered into the oil bath. And I saw the Jawas shoot R2. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, "Oh my God, we got to go back and see this movie. There's all Jawas shot R2. We got to see this movie again." So you walked in, or they walked in. Your parents, obviously, you weren't there. Still 13 years off in the future. So your parents, are you the oldest, youngest? Do you have brothers and sisters?
I only have one sister, and she's younger than me.
And she's younger than you. Son. So your parents, they were together for 13 solid years. 13 solid years of independence and freedom before they decided to have kids.
Yeah.
That's a smart way to do it. That's a smart way to do it, I'll tell you, man.
Of course, and back then in the 70s, I think there used to be a time when people would stay in the cinema and they would actually just watch the movie, and then they would wait for the next screen to see it again. And that was like in one screening. I think they had to maybe take a bathroom break or go by the.
Yeah, I don't think that was illegal. Was it illegal back then?
No, I used to do it. I used to do it all the time for Star Wars, Empire. I remember one time I sat through 3 screenings of Empire, back to back to back. And I had one king-size bag of Skittles. And my goal was to make that bag last through all 3 screenings. And I remember after the 3rd time I saw it, and Iris is out, and it's directed by Irwin Kershner and stuff, I popped the last of the Skittles into my mouth. And kid me was thinking about the headlines in the paper, kid makes bag of Skittles last, And the headlines never happened. Yeah. No, there was nothing.
Well, maybe if you lived in a real small town, you might have had a shot. But living in Chicago, there's bigger stuff.
I was expecting the whole press corps to meet me upon my emergence from the theater, and it never happened. Maybe someday.
Thanks, Ben. Appreciate the call. You brought up R2-D2, and if I recall, Jim, we were wondering whether or not R2 was actually on set. Now, that's been confirmed now. There was some debate about whether the R2 was all CG. Now, I mean, we don't know. It seems unlikely that they would have the practical R2 there on set and then CG him out with a CG version. So I don't think they did that. But you saw R2, and they actually lifted some of his expressions. They talk about this, some of his expressions from Return of the Jedi. I mean, that's how they were chasing this Return of the Jedi, the feels of this, that they even lifted some of his eye movement or the flashing in the eye.
Yeah, which I thought was a weird thing to bring up, because you could see the R2, the practical R2 model that was on set. It had all of that stuff going on, all the blinking lights and stuff. I don't know what the hell they were illustrating into it, quite honestly.
I think they were trying to show the level of authenticity that they were going for, where it's we're lifting this expression. Yeah, it was real. It was detailed. I wouldn't know one red blink from another from R2 in that eye, but they did.
Yeah. He goes from red to blue and back again. I just think they were happy that they were able to replicate that effect from the original. But again, I saw it on the practical model that was there on the set anyway, so I don't know what they were painting in. But also, I don't understand the fact that there was a green R2 unit that was used in some of the shooting. Did you catch that?
I didn't catch that. No,
I should have done a screen grab of that one. But there was a green R2 unit that was clearly visible during some of the shooting. Most notably when Luke is walking back toward the elevator, and you just see him from the back, and he's got baby Grogu
I
there.
think I have an answer for that. I think it's because they were using blue screen. And if they would have tried to shoot R2 in front of a blue screen, those blue, the blue deco would not have shown up. It would have thrown that off. So they needed to have him green where he was blue.
Yeah. That's the same issue that they had when they were shooting the original Star Wars, most notably during the Battle of Yavin and the trench run scene. All of those shots with R2 in the back of the cockpit, he's black. All of his accents aren't blue; they're black, and they did that because of the same reason you're bringing up. And it's been fixed in subsequent releases, special editions, Blu-ray releases, what have you. But that R2 had black accents instead of blue, and so I guess history is repeating itself. I have a clip of Jon Favreau who talks about being flooded with emotion when he saw Luke and R2 on the set.
It was already intense because it was already, my God, here's Mark Hamill dressed as Luke Skywalker on our set in a starship hallway. It felt like a dream. It was very, very strange. And I was fine. And then R2-D2 rolled on. And I just had a moment where R2-D2 was there. And that's when I broke down. And it felt, I didn't understand why. It felt silly, but I started tearing up. And I just was like, let me remember this moment. And even now I'm sort of moved by it. I don't understand why. I really don't. I don't understand why. But it just shows you how deep that stuff goes and what it touches from your childhood and how you felt then.
There's something nice about him not trying to explain why. I like that he says, I don't even know why. I don't even know why. Because, you can try to explain it and you can say, well, it's childhood this, childhood that. But he does say it's very, very deep. And it's like, that's good enough for me. Just leave it at that. It's just deep. It touches something. It's like smiling when you see Santa Claus. There's something about R2, that's just so joyful.
Yeah. And you just hear in Favreau's response, it's just dripping with integrity and authenticity. And that, he's not being scientific about anything. It's all just pure emotion.
Yes.
And that, I think, is something that drives him as a writer. I think that's something that drives him as a producer. I think that's something that drives him as an actor and as a director, is just working the emotional.
He doesn't sound like he doesn't sound like some filmmakers that always act as though they're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
They approach it like that. Whereas Favreau is, I think, very Lucasian in the sense that, although George can get very technical too, but his storytelling is so large and the themes are so big, and I think that's where it can go off the rails a little bit, and that doesn't happen. But it was great to hear him just admit that this was and it wasn't even just seeing Mark Hamill. It was like, I'm sure it was emotional, and then R2 wheels out and you're like, okay, this is, how great is this?
I was flooded with emotion. It hit me like a brick during the credits is when it just really hit me. Like, wow, what did I just see? Wow, that was something I really needed to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. It flooded me with emotions. I couldn't. And as it was happening, it was one of those things where I was like this.
Oh, you're doing the silent cry.
Oh yeah.
The quiet cry.
At least I think I was silent. Thank God no one was able to hear me if I wasn't. But I was just, and while this is happening, the thought bubble was just like, I can't believe this is happening.
Right.
And then I just started walking around saying, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. I walked out of my basement, onto my front porch, oh my Godding like crazy. And And so hearing Favreau in that last clip, while I was watching the show this morning, I was getting like sort of those little tingles, those oh my God tingles again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he gets it, and that's what we got as viewers, what he got on the set. And I think that's what any filmmaker desires, is for the reaction they have on the set when they're not completely being engulfed by the whole process and they're actually able to let themselves loose and see what's going on and be in the moment. I think that's the greatest goal for any filmmakers, to have that feeling then be felt by the people viewing the show or the movie, what have you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was a quote from Dave Filoni in the little trailer for this episode, and he talked about Star Wars is at the end of the day, it's to give you a good feeling. And it's funny that he puts it that way because, the iconic line, I have a bad feeling about this, you flip it, Star Wars should be the exact opposite, should give you a good feeling. And he talks about it's for, it should give a good feeling to you and, your family, your kids, whatever. And I also thought, I liked that they acknowledged the fact that in this, and Favreau talks about it, he goes, in this world of atomized entertainment where you can just watch just what you want to watch, and families are, all over their house with, different screens, and this show brings so many people in the household together for that appointment viewing, that watching together, and how important that was to them.
Yeah, and that totally dispels the idea that Star Wars has to be cultivated for a certain audience, a modern audience, a young audience. Star Wars should never be pigeonholed that way. It needs to have the broad universal appeal that fueled George Lucas's original trilogy. George studied mythology and the history of mythology and was trying to uncover the things in those myths that make us all connect to the story when we hear it, regardless of where we're from, regardless of what era we live in. There are consistencies in storytelling that appeal to a universal broad audience. And for then George to take all of that stuff, put it into a mixing pot and create something for families that, we're all part of a family.
Right.
Whether it be blood or whether it be friendship or what have you. But that's the universal appeal, because families are made up of all different ages, people from everywhere, anywhere. That's the universal broad appeal of Star Wars.
Yeah, I think they even say, it's multi-generational, and I liked, he does bring up the point, and Jim, I know you can relate to this, about, he goes, in that original generation of fans, they're no longer Luke Skywalker. They're watching their own kids go off on their own hero's journey, going off to college, going off to high school, maybe starting their own families. And so, it's a full circle moment. And that's probably one of the reasons why revisiting a beloved character like that in the way that we remember them or hope to remember them is so profound. All right, Nathan from Maryland joining us. Nathan, you're next up here on Rebel Force Radio. Hello.
Hey, dudes, how about we bring Plo Koon back from the dead? No, he's dead. He yeeted his starship into a mountain. Sorry, I'm thinking back to all those interviews where Dave would talk about how he kept pushing for
Plo Koon to come back.
Post-order 66. Yeah, so I got a good laugh out of that from the.
Well, I like that the whole idea, still serves some purpose. The idea of bringing Plo Koon back from the dead was able to become this sort of ruse. But although I don't even think that leaked. I don't remember anybody running around saying, "Hey, I heard Plo Koon shows up in the last episode." So
no, J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson need to take some notes on how to keep secrets. Apparently,
right.
But no, I was calling because there was a moment in there where Dave was dropping some not so subtle hints that Ahsoka Tano may have had some post-Return of the Jedi training and interactions with Luke Skywalker or something.
I didn't pick up on that.
I don't know.
I didn't pick up on that. He talked about how she was trained. She had better training than Luke. He said, you know, it can be argued that Ahsoka was certainly trained much more thoroughly than Luke Skywalker was.
Right.
And so, you know, so what we see with the Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian when he shows up in the season finale is a Luke Skywalker who has achieved a higher level of lightsaber and force abilities. But that just comes with experience. What is it, like a 5-year period of time between The Mandalorian and The Return of the Jedi? So Luke is 5 years more advanced in his saber skills. And then he did compare it to Ahsoka, where he said, you know, Ahsoka is definitely more skilled because she had more training. But I didn't quite make the connection that you're making, that Ahsoka may have trained Luke. And you know what?
Quote.
Say what?
Sorry, I can't remember the exact quote, but in the middle there, he said something about how in Return of the Jedi he had very little training, and he may have received some at some point. But he made a note to say that his lightsaber skills, like his fighting form, was very different than, say, in Ahsoka Tano. And I think that's when he first brought her up. And then he went on to say,
I kind of agree with what you're saying. I didn't take it as literally as you did, though your read on this might be bang on, actually. But what he does say,
I'm feeling it.
What Filoni does say is, he says something like, what people don't know is that really she's his senior. She's his, I think that was the term he used, his senior.
Right.
That's
something we think about because she's a more modern character.
Exactly. Yes. And he says, yes, exactly. He goes, you don't really tend to think of that because of, you know, the pay, or how the movies and the shows came out. But that would be interesting. You're right. He did go so far as to draw a comparison between Luke's saber style and Ahsoka's. I think that what he was doing there was, you know, when Phantom Menace came out, you sound like a young guy, Nathan. You might not have even been born when Phantom Menace came out. But when the Phantom Menace came out,
I was 3 years old.
You were 3 years old. Okay, all right.
That's the way it knows.
When Phantom Menace came out, we saw the lightsaber battle between Qui-Gon and Darth Maul and Obi-Wan. We were like, wow, okay, that's crazy. What happened? You know, how did they lose all of that amazing, saber capabilities? And the reality was, of course, they were retconning it. That's, you know, one movie was made in 1976, the other one was made in 1998. So very different, but it still was a thing. And so Luke, you know, couldn't, you know, Dave was just sort of saying, even though we made this thing recently, Luke's not going to show up and fight like the Jedi do in the Clone Wars and in the prequels. But I do think that there's enough there to perhaps begin to think about what a story might be that has Luke Skywalker meeting up with Ahsoka Tano. I don't think that that's a stretch, and I don't hate the idea.
No, not at all. And I'll tell you what, I stand on this. Hey, Nathan, don't you think that if Ahsoka knew where Luke was and how to, well, she didn't know necessarily where Luke was. She just said, put Grogu on the rock and the Jedi will find him. But say Ahsoka and Luke, they do cross paths. It would only be natural for Luke to seek Jedi knowledge from her.
Right.
In a way, Luke could
because he's jumping around the galaxy and looking for holocrons and everything. Yeah.
He's out looking for that stuff, yeah.
And when she, a point I think is lost a lot, when she returned from the world between worlds, she was stranded on a planet that had no inhabitants. So there's a decade between that moment in Rebels and her appearance in Mandalorian. But we don't know how long she was stuck on that planet before she was able to get off, too.
Yeah.
So all through the original trilogy, in my head canon, that explains why she doesn't show up, even though she was involved with the rebellion and everything. But it's funny you brought up my age. So the Star Wars to me, my dad, he was original trilogy. He was 7 when the movie came out. The prequels were coming out as I was coming up. I was 12 when the Clone Wars movie came out. And I was a little too young to see Phantom Menace in theaters, and Attack of the Clones, I vaguely remember seeing it anywhere but my house. But he had the VHSs, the ones that had the faces of Yoda and... it was the last of the original before the special cut.
One last time.
And, so I feel like the prequel generation that's my age, we kind of hold the original trilogy and the prequels on the same platform. Like, I never saw the difference. I loved Luke. Even though I'm the age I am, I loved Luke before I loved Anakin, or even simultaneously having watched those VHS tapes again and again and again and again. There's a piece of fan art. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's made the rounds a ton of times, but this one picture is all Star Wars to me. Just, I need it to happen. But it's Ahsoka Tano on the bridge of the Falcon with Luke Skywalker, and Leia's there holding a baby Ben Solo, and she's showing them a holocron recording of Anakin Skywalker in his Clone Wars armor, mowing down battle droids.
Okay.
And it's just this unity of everything coming together.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's kind of like how we begged for the Kenobi series for 8 years until they finally announced it. I feel like that's coming. There's no way that between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, Luke Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano don't have some sort of story. And, he's even looking for stories about his father and trying to understand who Anakin was. And
it makes a lot of. I'll tell you what, Nathan. If you'd have just called and said, "Hey, what do you think about a Luke Skywalker meets Ahsoka Tano story?" My first thought would have been like, I don't know. But you did a really good job of making me excited for it and seeing the possibility of it. I think it would be cool. I think it makes a lot of sense. I want to know more about what Luke wants to know about his father and his family history and seeking Jedi knowledge. And so anyway, thanks for calling. Great conversation. Jim, you mentioned Ahsoka when she says to the Mandalorian, she says, put him on the rock and the Jedi will find him. And, we have this problem with this word Jedi because it's plural and singular at the same time. And so you could read it one way where Ahsoka, who does not consider herself a Jedi, keep in mind, would say the Jedi, meaning Luke, like he is the last, for that time, hate to use this expression, but the last Jedi, potentially. It's more likely at that period of time that she would be using that expression to mean Luke than it would be the Jedi as some sort of mass group, because there might be some out there. I just don't see her referring to them as a group.
Yeah, well, I always think about what Yoda said, when gone am I, the last of the Jedi, you will be.
Yeah.
So there might be 4 strong individuals in the galaxy still, but Jedi, no, outside of Ahsoka, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's what Yoda says. I always put a lot of stock into that when Yoda says that he knows that he's the last Jedi until Luke becomes the last Jedi.
Yeah.
Even Ryan Johnson knows that, for crying out loud.
Well, speaking of which, Ben on the chat here, Ben Bamboo, he says, did you notice all the times Favreau said it was important to keep Luke consistent? Quote, consistent, shade thrown at the sequels, question mark. I don't know about shade being thrown at the sequels. Per se, I think that they would be crazy to not acknowledge in some way, whether it be overtly or just through the story that they're telling in the way that they're telling it. It would be crazy not to acknowledge the fact that there was large dissatisfaction, large dissatisfaction with the Luke Skywalker that we got in those movies, period. I mean, it has nothing to do with whether you like Rey or not, or whether you like Finn or not, or whether you like Poe. It has everything to do with, did the Luke Skywalker that we saw in that film, did it match up with what we know of that character, of that hero? That doesn't mean you can't show evolution, that you can't show range, but you don't spend nearly the entirety of your time with that character where they're out of character. And, there's a lot of ways that you can tell a story and show a hero or a protagonist growing, or, show their growth. But it was just too much. It was just too much.
Yeah,
in my
there
opinion.
comes a point when character evolution becomes character de-evolution, and I don't know how healthy that is for the character. I really like what Nathan's saying, and I don't think that we should look the other way at what Filoni's saying, because I was just reviewing what he said in the special, and he flat out says, while talking about the discussions they had concerning Luke Skywalker's lightsaber skills in The Mandalorian, he said, yeah, sure, it would have been easy to make him over-the-top great sword fighter. But they didn't want to go in that direction. Filoni flat out says, he's had training, but I don't know who's been teaching him sword fight training, or who's been teaching him. So he says something like that. It says, you know what's interesting? He's had training, but I don't know who's been teaching him sword fight training, so he had to have had a style that was better than what we saw in Jedi, but fundamentally still of the same tree of sword fighting technique. And his technique and Ahsoka's technique should be very different. And technically, she's had vastly more training than he ever has. She's a senior, which is difficult for people to understand when these characters were created. Because of when these characters were created. Is that
Right.
why he's saying that?
Yeah.
So we assume that Luke is a greater Jedi just because he's been in our public consciousness for so long. And Ahsoka was created, years and years, decades after Luke Skywalker. So we assume Luke Skywalker, because he's been around longer in our minds, should be the more superior swordsman. But Ahsoka has more training. She's technically a better sword fighter. So she is his senior. But why does Filoni suddenly bring up Ahsoka when he's talking about Luke's sword fighting abilities? Sure, maybe he can just be looking at another example of saber sword fighting from season 2, the only example outside of Luke Skywalker. That was Ahsoka Tano. She was, vastly more dynamic and was pulling off far more moves, but she was facing, flesh and blood, free-thinking individuals, and Luke was just mowing down battle droids. So,
right.
Sure, they were dark troopers. You can't discount the fact that they were more than just your Roger kind of guys.
Sure.
No offense, Matthew Wood. But Luke, went through them like a hot knife through butter. I want to see Luke Skywalker facing a flesh and blood enemy 5 years after Return of the Jedi, as he is starting to improve his saber skills. For Filoni to say that Luke has had training, he's not referring to Ben Kenobi. He's not referring to Yoda. So he says, Luke has had training, but I don't know who's been teaching him sword fight training. He's being very specific, and then he brings up Ahsoka. Now, you could say, well, Luke is in contact with four spirits, Anakin, Yoda, and Obi-Wan, possibly even Qui-Gon Jinn. And they could continue to train him. That's how I always assume Luke continued his training.
Yeah.
Was via his connection with the four spirits. But to then put Ahsoka Tano into the mix and have her become part of Luke Skywalker's story, now we're getting somewhere. Could we see that in the Ahsoka series?
Ooh.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Wow.
Have Shamook work on the deep fake Luke for Ahsoka?
Get Shamook.
That makes me excited. Somebody call Shamook. Get him on this, right? Oh, I'm sure he's being paid top dollar to work on it right now. So congrats to Schmook from Rebel Force Radio, and happy birthday, Jason.
Thanks. All right, first-time caller Chris from South Carolina joining us here. Chris, you're next up. Hello.
Hey, how we doing?
Doing great.
Chris.
Good. Happy birthday as well. I believe that's what I heard before I got here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So yeah, there were a couple things that were brought up, and kind of wanted to tackle those. First, I think it's it goes without saying that I'm very, very, very happy to see Filoni and Favreau treating the source material and the characters with like a certain dignity, a certain respect, because they do know how much they mean to everybody. And I'm 28. I was never there in the theaters. I wasn't there in 77 and 79 and 83 or whatever they were. But I grew up with it, and Luke was one of those characters that definitely spoke out to me the most. Like his hero's journey from, simple farm boy to becoming like a Jedi, like the Jedi, was just awe-inspiring for a young kid. Yeah. So to see Favreau and Filoni really treat him with respect does a lot to garner respect from the audience as well, I think. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the sequel trilogy, you can say what you want about them. I didn't care for them, and that's putting it nicely, because I felt like they just treated the characters and the material with such disrespect. Like seeing Luke in his prime, like almost at his prime in Mandalorian, and then seeing him drink green milk from some weird manatee was just like the weirdest thing I've ever seen, and just didn't fit.
Well, what we saw, we did see was everyone. It seemed like every one of the core characters, those at least the Trinity, every one of them took a dive of some sort to put over, to use a pro wrestling term, to put over the new baby face, the new hero. That's what I didn't like. It was like they were there just to prop up the other characters, because clearly the goal from the outset of Disney making those films was to create a brand new group of core characters to take the Star Wars franchise, the film franchise, into the future, which in and of itself is not a stupid idea. Of course, you got to have new characters be introduced so that you can carry the film franchise forward. These actors and these characters can't be around necessarily forever. Although we're learning with deepfake, maybe they can. We'll see. But it's not in what they were doing. It's always in it's so often rests in the how they went about it, how they did it. And pulling down iconic heroes just to make the other ones look better, to push the other ones up by pulling the other ones down, it's not the way to do it in my book.
Right.
Yeah, right. And that was the overall issue that I had, was that there comes a time when you have to pass the torch, right? Yeah. You have to pass the torch to the next generation, but how they went about it, the idea was there, but the execution was terrible. And I think that is I think that's a point that a lot of people miss. They hate Rey for some reason. They hate Rose for some reason without actually explaining why. They tend to hate on the movies, but I think like the execution behind it was the biggest issue. It was the biggest flaw. I mean, they had no plan, right, for the characters.
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what it comes down to, which is so opposite of what you're learning from Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni in this, is that it does seem very well thought out in advance.
Yeah. For sure. And that was, when I heard Daisy Ridley, when I heard her in an interview say that she didn't even know she was Palpatine's daughter until the last movie, I was like, what? Like, that should have been something that was planned out like Marvel. Like that had 10 years of planning behind it, and you're just going to drop that.
Yeah, or
what? No, it doesn't make
sense. Or
sense.
Another franchise, if for those that are fans of the Harry Potter franchise, famously, actor Alan Rickman, who played character of Snape, was told by J.K. Rowling the truth about his character long before the final book was published and written. So he was one of maybe 2, 3, I don't know how many people, very few, outside of J.K. Rowling that knew the truth about that character before. I mean, not just before it was on screen, but before it was even published in a book. So you talk about pre-planning. I mean, that goes a long way, especially when you're dealing with characters that mean so much to so many people. So, Chris, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate the call. Great call. Great.
What was the truth about? What's the truth about Snape? Refresh my memory.
The truth about Snape was that he wasn't actually out trying to get Harry. He was protecting Harry the entire time. And so, because he had he was in love with Harry's mother, Lily, and he swore an oath. And so you go back now. What's cool about that is you go back and you see the first film, and Harry's playing Quidditch, and they think that Snape is casting a spell on Harry and his broom to hurt him. But now you go back and you watch that same scene, and you realize now he's actually trying to help Harry with this spell and protect him. So it's cool.
Well, I could hear a million voices crying out loud all at once, saying, George Lucas didn't know Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father when he created the first film. It wasn't until he was developing Empire Strikes Back when the story evolved in that direction.
Yeah. But, we talk about the singularity of it becoming from one person. Makes a big difference.
Somehow, though, it all worked with Owen Lars at the homestead breakfast table. There's so much of his father in him. That's what I'm afraid of. And then Ben's hesitation before explaining to Luke how his father died. How did my father die? Deliberate. I know. A young Jedi named Darth Vader.
You're so right. I mean, there's so much that just worked. It was meant to be. That's all I can say. And I don't think that George was trying to be overly clever. I think he always knew that Luke's father, I think he knew he had to create some mystery around Luke's father. I don't think he was ever boxing himself in very much. I don't think George does that. I think George leaves things open. We know he loves to go back and tinker with things.
And he made two films. He made two films without really acknowledging Luke and Leia being twins. Yeah. But that was always, things. These are concepts that were always bouncing around in his development of the scripts. The concept of twins. No, there is another. Mm-hmm. That wasn't really defined. Lucas was thinking about the next trilogy when he created the concept of the other.
Yes.
But then when he was making Return of the Jedi, he realized that he wasn't going to make the next trilogy because his life was falling apart, his family was falling apart, and he was burnt to a crisp from Star Wars.
Yeah.
And wanted to build a company and become the very thing he hated, the head of a corporation, the head of a filmmaking studio. And but I mean, those are just the realities of life,
Right.
The only reason why Disney / Lucasfilm stopped making Star Wars films has nothing to do with life. It has everything to do with ill thought out lack of preparation. And to fail to prepare is to prepare for failure, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm not going to sit here and just crap all over the sequel trilogy and call it a flat out failure, but we all see the weaknesses and the flaws in it, even if we love it.
Sure.
I happen to like the Rise of Skywalker. I happen to like the Rise of Skywalker, but I'm certainly not going to jump up and down and scream and say it's the greatest Star Wars film of all time or a filmmaking masterpiece or anything like that. I see the flaws; it's there, but I still find enjoyment in that film.
All right. Well, we got first-time caller Matthew from Philly. Hey, Matthew. You're on with Rebel Force Radio.
Jimmy.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good.
I just wanted to call. I don't really have too much to discuss regarding the Mandalorian. I called to let you guys know that you guys played a big part in my sobriety. For almost 10 years, drugs and alcohol have taken a big chunk of my life, and I remember listening to you guys' show for years, going on, even dark days, good days. You guys were present during all of this through my growth and through my change, and I just want to thank you guys for that. Like, seriously.
Wow.
I really, truly mean it.
Wow,
I'm doing
Matthew.
a lot better now, but you guys have been present.
Well, you did all the work, man.
And I also wanted to...
You did all the work.
Yeah. Congratulations, too, by the way. Living a clean and healthy life, it obviously has benefited you in so many ways. And whatever distraction that we were able to give you, so to push you to that goal, I feel grateful that we were able to play that role. And very blessed. And so congratulations, my friend. Good for you.
Thank you so much. And just one more thing I want to talk about. You guys remember when Micro Machines made Star Wars?
Oh, yeah. Yes. It was some of the first Star Wars product back on the toy shelves.
Yep. And I just recently started buying some of them again, and man, they were just so great. Even some of them were cheesy. Like you had characters like Darth Vader's helmet, and it opens up, and it's like the Death Star, the levels, and then you had like a Luke Skywalker head, and you open up, and it's the Avonport base. And then some of them that were just regular play sets, like the Hawk base, and like the miniature scales that, the miniature figures they made and went with it were just so great, man. Like.
Yeah,
I remember when The Force Awakens, they did Micro Machines, and then they kind of discontinued it after, but it wasn't as great. But back then, man, it was the meat and potatoes for me, man.
They were cool.
I used to collect all of them.
They were real cool. I liked them because they reminded me of the micro collection that they had back in the vintage Kenner days, which they were die-cast figures and play sets. And I have a real soft spot for that line because it was some of the very first Star Wars toys that I got that were mine. I had to share all my toys with my older brother. He had to share his toys with me, I should say. And so, but that Bespin, the Bespin play set micro collection that I actually still have, and I still have the box and everything. That's really special to me because that was mine. No one got to play with that but me. But the Micro Machines were very reminiscent of that.
Yeah, and my favorite was they did concept vehicles, like they did Ralph McQuarrie vehicles. Like they had the AT-AT, and it looked like, it obviously looked different. They did the snow speeder. They did like different kinds, and it was a line. And then they had the X-ray fleet, which is cool. They were just transparent, like these clear. They were the ships, but they were clear, and you could see mock wires and shit inside of it. And it was just so sorry for my language.
Oh, that's all right.
It was just so cool,
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much, and thanks for those kind words. Like I said, you did all the work, but as Jim mentioned, if we helped in some way by even just entertaining you, keeping your mind off other things, that's awesome. We love you, and thank you very much. I was just thinking, Jim, we brought up Micro Machines. I think that's some of because Ralph McQuarrie did some of the box art, the packaging art for that line.
Yes, he did.
And I think it's some of the last
box art,
some of the last Star Wars stuff that he may have done.
He did a ton of stuff for Galoob, and even store displays. The big displays you would see up on the top of the end cap or whatever, or down the aisle. He would create that stuff. I even found a store display while I was driving to Nashville one year. We stopped off in Effington, Illinois. Effington, Illinois. Let me say that correctly. And that's downstate from Chicago, and we were doing some antiquing along the way, and this guy had a store display, Ralph McQuarrie Galoob Micro Machines, and it's about 7 feet long by probably 2 feet, 3 feet wide. It's huge, and it's just great Ralph McQuarrie Hoth art, and I bought for $25 at the
so cool.
at the antique shop along the side of the road. Also, another lucky moment that I had with Micro Machines is when you get to be known as the Star Wars guy in the office. Sometimes you get a windfall of collectibles. A sales guy walked into my studio once when I was at CBS Radio, and he comes in, and this guy, I thought he knew me pretty well, but apparently he didn't, because he came in and he goes, "So what is this? You like Star Wars or something?" And I'm like, "Dude, where have you been?" And he said, "Well, I have this client, and they heard you talking about Star Wars on the air, and they have a box of crap they want to give you." And I said, "Oh, sure, just send me the box of crap." And what it was this lady had saved her kids' toys, Micro Machines. The kids didn't want them, and it was explained to me, they're a family that doesn't save stuff. Once they've used it for whatever they need to use it for, they get rid of it. And so, think about the person who gets rid of the Christmas tree on December 26th. You see it at the end of their curb there. It's like, what? It's only the day after, but they got to get that tree out of the house. Well, this lady, she needed to get Star Wars crap out of her house because her kids outgrew it. Maybe they even moved out of the house or whatever. And so he comes in with 2 giant plastic bins filled with Micro Machines, all in the box, all of them together, and the little guys all in sandwich bags, and all very well taken care of. I brought it home. My kids were little at the time. They rifled through that thing and just made a mess of it. And I still have that big plastic bin filled with all of those Micro Machines up in my attic. I need to pull that down and see what kind of treasures I actually have in there, because I haven't looked at it in 15 years or whatever. Because my kids, they rip through it. And I said, "Guys, what'd you do? What did you do, man?" But I mean, I still can't, even if the kids go after like my vintage Star Wars stuff that, some of it's worth quite a fortune now, but I still come short of telling them not to. I cannot tell a kid, "You can't play with this toy." It's just something I cannot do. It's
tough. Yeah, and I was never good at going out and buying toys for myself and not buying for the kids. That was I wasn't expecting that as I started as I had kids. Well, no, Dad can buy. Toys, oh, look what you got! Mandalorian action figure.
I was at Walmart today. And this is an impulse buy. They had rows and rows of this stuff. It's a new Mandalorian action figure by Hasbro. Somehow they can get cases and cases of this stuff out to the store, discount action figures, as opposed to the real 3 3/4 inch or Black Series stuff that collectors want.
Hashtag keep 375 alive.
Yes, thank you. I went down the toy aisle just out of tradition at this point. It's a fruitless effort every time I go. There's never anything swinging from the pegs. But I saw these by the checkout aisle, and like I said, they had rows and rows of it, all characters. These are about like 4, maybe 4.5 inch action figures that have very little action. The points of articulation, I think I can count on one finger. But here, let's take this thing off here. It's the Mandalorian, by the way, for people listening on the audio podcast. I have a Hasbro Mandalorian. It checked out at $5.13 at the register. These are all new Hasbro collectibles.
Yep.
So this is what they're prioritizing over getting 3 3/4 inch out on the shelves.
This is 4 points of articulation. Yeah.
Here's 1 point of articulation. And then the arms move, the waist moves, and the heads.
We got swivel at the waist. We got arm. You got the shoulders. You got the neck. I'm trying to do my best, like YouTube review. Yeah, he's cool.
And the blaster is molded into the hand, so it's not removed.
You know what though? You get some really great sculpt with that. When they don't have to really worry so much about the articulation, they can really focus on that. It's great if you just want a figure sitting on your desk to tell everybody in the office that you're a Mando fan or you're a Star Wars fan. It's a great one. It's a great one.
It's not bad. It really is not bad.
And look, at the prices that the Black Series and the 3 3/4 inch series are being sold. I mean, I don't know how, you got to be pretty well off to be able to keep your kids stocked in those Star Wars toys. So I think it's great that they've got something more affordable or reasonable at the stores. Let's go look at that.
Tables turned.
Yeah, giant Baby Yoda carrying.
Yeah, no. They could carry him, it's like, aha, now it's my turn.
Hey, we got a special
Baby Yoda.
A special surprise visit here to RFR after show. Mr. Stephen Stanton, a great voice actor and a big part of the Star Wars universe. In fact, got a shout out from D. Bradley Baker on our D. Bradley Baker interview. But Stephen, it's always a treat when you show up, and especially when you engage the folks in the live chat. Great to hear from you.
Hey guys.
Hello.
Yeah, that was first off, it was a great show. And
isn't it cool?
Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
I'm coming through.
Perfect.
Okay, all right. It's a great show, but I also wanted to, reason I'm calling in mainly is to wish Jason Swank a happy birthday.
Oh, really?
Hey.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. And, I was, and we were thinking over here, it's like, okay, Jason, we know it's either bourbon or scotch or whiskey, but we don't know which is your preferred. Like to send you a little something.
Oh.
What's your preference?
Well, I do love bourbon. But I generally only have one rule, and that is as long as it's wet, I will drink it. But if you ask,
perfect.
Yeah. But bourbon would be my fave. So,
well, there you go. Happy birthday, Jason.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much. Thank you. While we have you on the line, Stephen, I mean, you've been involved in multiple Star Wars productions, from animation to live action and things. And seeing this and seeing the level of detail that goes into bringing this character back to us as fans. I mean, what was your reaction in seeing this? Do you still learn a few things when you see a special like this behind the scenes?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was so much, that I was wondering about myself, and the terms of special effects and how they coordinated all this. I was really surprised to hear about how they did Mark Hamill's voice, and then the use of the doubles and how they, seemed to do a sort of a combination of computer animation and deep fake and the performance capture, or whatever you want to call it, from using a double and Mark. I mean, it's really Dave Filoni never lets me down as far as any project he's involved in. I'm always surprised to see the level of ingenuity, especially because for years I've known a number of people that worked at ILM, whether it's Richard Edlund and Phil Tippett, and a lot of other people that actually worked on the original trilogy, and the level of talent that is at that place and that gets attracted to that place never fails to amaze me.
Yeah, I'm curious because a lot of what you do, in addition to creating original characters, a lot of what you do is voice doubling. Famously, you did it for Roger Ebert in the documentary film that came out about him. How do you, as someone who has a specialty in doing this type of thing, and it really is an art form. I mean, it is an art form. When you see technology start to do some of these things, how does that make you feel? Are you threatened by it? Do you welcome it? Do you think that it's exciting? And just curious, your take on all of that.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the motion picture industry since day one, when we started doing, the transition from silent to sound films, from into widescreen to CGI. There's always been these sort of these great leaps, technologically speaking, that, sometimes you might think, well, how are people that were involved in it in one aspect, how are they going to make the transition to the other? But there are a lot of things to think about when you're doing these technological innovations, and the main one is, how do they service the telling of the story? And that's always foremost, I think, at everybody's mind. It's like, can we use this to not just make a big deal about it and say like, oh, look, isn't this cool what we did, but rather does it help us tell the story better? I think in most of the cases that we've seen technological advances in motion pictures, that's what it's been. Now, granted, Matt Wood talked about, using the software, the AI software, to recreate Mark's voice for this, but we don't know how many hours went into that. I remember when I worked with Phil Tippett up at his studio doing some motion capture work for him back in the mid 90s. We actually used to have to wear an exoskeleton with about 6 feet of cable behind it that would allow us to, you couldn't really do that much. It's not like motion capture today. But at the time, it was like, well, we can tell the story better this way. And, we need actors, to go in there and do that. But at the same time, now look how far we've come beyond that. And, it's much better now than it was when I wish I had a picture of me in that crazy rig that we used on like Hollow Man and some of the other films over there, because if you were to see it, you look like the actor looked like something out of the Terminator. It was essentially taking the DID rig that they built for Jurassic Park and making it full size for a human to wear on their body. So, these leaps forward, I think, so long as they service the telling of the story, I think they're all good.
Yeah, it was a couple of times in this documentary, it was mentioned that these are all tools that come from a variety of places. They weren't necessarily made specifically for filmmaking. Some of them are, they just come from a variety of different industries. And I like the way you're saying, look, it's not about replacing something. It's about just having another tool in the toolbox. Sometimes you may need a living, breathing human being to give life to those words. And sometimes you might be able to run it through a synthesizer and that'll be good enough.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back, like going back to Phil Tippett, when he was doing the stop motion test for Jurassic Park, things kind of went sideways when they decided to go CG. But what happened at the time period was they created the dinosaur input device because they realized at the time, well, there was nobody really trained well enough in computer graphics that knew the movements of animals and dinosaurs like the stop motion animators did. So they created the DID so that the stop motion animators could create a lot of the CG that we saw on screen there just by moving those small sort of like exoskeletons in a way that would be believable. And then since then, animators have, they've made that leap and now they can do that. It's just like when Walt Disney, went from doing something like the short subjects to Snow White or Fantasia. There were all these huge leaps, and people had to adapt to them and say, "Can we make this work? Can we make it better?" And what is the the end result? There was always a push. I'll say this in defense of Walt Disney himself. His idea was that each feature film that they did should be better and different in some way than the previous one, whether artistically, technically, or whatever. It's like there should be something that says this isn't just a repeat of what we did before. We've got to push ourselves beyond. And I think all of us in the film industry, if we keep that in mind, nobody will feel threatened by these kinds of advances. They'll just say like, yes, like you just said, this is a new tool. And now actors, in some ways it makes it easier for actors to do their job. Whether it's, on camera or wearing a motion capture suit or providing a voice reference that'll then be synthesized into something else above and beyond what you did that.
Right.
For them.
Right. Wow. That's such a positive take. I love it. And that's total Stephen Stanton right there. Always with a positive look at things. And you've been in the business long enough that you're such a student of the history of the business that you not to panic at things like this, But what about just talking to you as a fan? I know you're part of that original generation of fans. I don't know if we've spoken to you specifically about this moment in The Mandalorian and the return of Luke Skywalker and perhaps a more recognizable form than we saw him most recently. How did this impact you and your fandom?
I loved it because it was such a great connection to, the original trilogy. And anytime they can do that effectively without making it seem like, oh, we just did this to show off or just to please the fans. It was like when Rogue One, when I was working on Admiral Raddus and they showed me, we've got unused footage of the original X-Wing pilots that we're going to repurpose for this film. And I'm like, God, what a great idea.
So cool.
This is like a perfect way to connect that to this.
Yeah.
And then now with with bringing Luke Skywalker and with his sort of return of the Jedi, his look and his robes and everything, we've all been wondering what happened to Luke Skywalker after that film. And this is kind of just that little taste, that little tease to let us know, like, yeah, he was out there doing stuff.
Yeah.
And he got little baby Grogu, and no, I thought it was just a wonderful tie-in. I mean, it's the one thing that I can only speak from having worked with Dave Filoni for so many years, and I know it's not all Dave Filoni. There's Jon Favreau and Kathleen Kennedy and a bunch of other people that are all involved in these things. But whenever I see something like this, and I know that Dave's had his thumbprint is on it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense, because he's so good at tying things together and making it make sense. I remember when they brought Maul back. And Dave told us, in the session, he said, George Lucas told me we want to bring Maul back. And he said, like, no, you got to be kidding me. I sat there in the theater as a kid and saw you chop him in half so that we couldn't bring him back.
Yeah.
And now you want me to do it. And, George I have the utmost confidence in you, or however he said it, that you're going to make this work. And I think he did. I think they all worked together and made that work in the way that we all accept Maul is back, and we don't even question it. And bringing Luke Skywalker back for The Mandalorian, I think he did it in such an organic way that it makes sense to us, and we just accept it, and we're all just really happy about it.
You nailed it about one of the things. There's so much that makes Dave Filoni special, but one of those things has always been his almost effortless ability to explain things, especially, when fans would get all up in arms. Well, what about this? What about that? I mean, we would watch him on the convention floor. Fans would come up and be like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And he just had this super calm way of explaining it. And they would just kind of all go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It was amazing. And he's just so well, I think that just speaks to just how well schooled he is. And he gets it not on that technical, super nerd, encyclopedic knowledge way. He gets it in a more kind of, for lack of a better word, spiritual way.
Yeah, Dave talked to us sometimes at length about, prior to his working with Lucasfilm, and how at, working on other animated shows, he'd be around the water cooler and bending someone's ear about, let me tell you why The Phantom Menace is a good movie. No, you have to listen to me, and he would run it down for them. And, so he's been a defender of a lot of this stuff from the very beginning, but he does it in a very positive way, not saying like, oh, you're wrong. It's just like, you just haven't seen it from this, certain point of view yet,
Exactly. Well, you're right. His fingerprints are all over this series, and all over this special. Let me ask you this: when you see him without the hat, which obviously you've probably seen him many times without the hat, but this is a little bit of a different Dave Filoni now. When you think back to when you first met him and you first started collaborating with him, did you ever foresee him in this role as a guy that's helping to create Star Wars, live action and bringing back Luke Skywalker and all of that?
I can tell you this: a long time ago, I talked to Dave Filoni, and even my managers were talking to him. It's like, you need to be doing live action. This is something that I think a number of us always believed he was capable of doing and really should be doing in some capacity, because he had a way of bringing those kinds of live action sensibilities to the animation that we hadn't seen, especially in television animation. So it's not been surprising to me. It was just a question of when rather than if.
Yeah, it's like when you see somebody in the minor leagues, not minor leagues. That's probably not a good example, but you see somebody that has just got the it factor, and you just know they're meant for big, big things. And I think Dave has had that. And
also,
of
course, being schooled by George Lucas too.
That doesn't hurt.
George Lucas is known as a live action director. Sure, he incorporated a lot of animation into his live action films, which led him down the road to actually creating animated series, which, nobody ever talks about that. What did Filoni teach Lucas about animated series? Because Dave obviously had the upper hand when it came to that, having worked on 2 series, King of the Hill and Avatar: The Last Airbender. So Filoni knew the ins and outs of the animation industry probably better than George Lucas did at first. And there might have been some of the apprentice teaching the master along the way.
Well, you never know. I mean, it could have been a fly on the wall there. That would have been maybe Dave will write about this one of these days in a making of book or whatever. But one of the things that George Lucas brought to animation was a live action sensibility, whether it was with the the previs and the way that I think I probably may have mentioned this to you guys once before. Back in season 2, when I did Masameda, there was the episode that I was in, the Duchess of Mandalore, had a number of scenes in it that have been, you can find them as deleted scenes on one of the Blu-rays, which is very rare for animation, because Dave told me at one point that what they were doing was they would animate the whole show just like they were doing a live action film, and then they would cut out, the stuff that you didn't, the stuff would end up on the cutting room floor, which is extremely rare for animation. But when you're George Lucas and, you can kind of do things the way you want to do, you have the luxury of saying, yeah, let's animate the whole thing and then we'll cut it like a live action film. So I think what George did with animation, and this is just me speculating here from what I've seen, is that he really brought a sense of we're going to treat it like live action cameras, live action filmmaking, like where do we place our cameras? How do we block out a scene with the actors? All this stuff that I think is now, a lot of it we take for granted, especially in the world of CG and 3D animation. But I think it was really new at the time they did the Clone Wars. And once again, George Lucas was a trailblazer, and took all the hard knocks and the, smoothing out all the rough edges to make it all work in a way that looks seamless to all of us in the audience, but is really, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into making that look that way on the screen.
Stephen, one last question I wanted to ask you, because Dave Filoni is this bridge between animation and live action, and we've seen characters like Ahsoka Tano, show up in live action when it began as in animation. When you're specifically thinking about Star Wars, when you're working on a Star Wars project and you have maybe a new character that you're voicing, and maybe it's for animation, does it ever enter your mind, or do you approach it differently now, thinking that, okay, am I setting this character up for potentially showing up in a live action series? Do you approach live action work, like Radis, for example, versus something for animation? Do you approach it differently? Or do you you're just an actor playing a role?
Yeah, no, I don't approach it differently. We put the same amount of effort and thinking into a live action role that I do into an animation role, and vice versa. Because, I think in an actor's mind, you don't really see the difference. You start with the same thing, whether it's live action or animation. It's words on a page, and then it's all in your mind about you're given an idea of what this character is, and then it's up to you to imagine, okay, how do I play that? And then the director will steer you in one direction or another, whether, if you're, hopefully, if you're hitting the mark on as to how they see it. Yeah. But no, I don't see a difference from one to the other. I treat them both with the same level of import, and, you just kind of have to do it that way. If you don't, then the animated characters won't come off as real, because you have to treat them like the real characters, like they would be if they were live action.
Yeah, it's so interesting how it's evolved. I'm a big fan of cartoons, cartoons, animated series. We called them cartoons when I was growing up, of of the 60s, 70s, 80s even. And it was a different time. It was as if, I love the Super Friends and I love the old 67 Spider-Man, series, for example. And it was almost a camp isn't the right word, but it was almost like an exaggerated version of the characters. They had their voices had to be if it was some of the great actors that voiced Batman in the Super Friends across the years, including Adam West. They had to be extra heroic and all of that. And there's a more of a realness to animation now than say 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and you could make that same case for television from that time period as well. If you look at $6 Million Man or The Incredible Hulk or even Star Trek or Lost in Space, there is part of what they were dealing with in those days is not only that was just the style of the time, but you were also trying to telegraph to the audience from a very small screen, and that was being a signal being received by an antenna. You got to make sure everything comes across. So
wow, never thought of it that way. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's different if you're sitting in a movie theater. But it's another thing if you got rabbit ears and you've got a black and white signal coming in and you're trying to what did he say in that scene or what are they trying? There's the extra close up of the bad guy holding the wrench behind his back. He's getting ready to sock the good guy with. It's
right.
There's just that level, and then and the acting styles have changed over the years. I have a number of friends who acted in a number of series in the 1970s and 80s, whether it's A-Team or Manimal or you name it, Partridge Family, All in the Family, all that kind of stuff. And just there were different demands being made on people, especially in those venues at that time period. And we've grown.
Yeah. But I have such fondness, and I retreat to those a lot of times, especially if I'm feeling stressed out or something. I go back to some of those old. Stephen, if you have a couple more minutes, we do have some questions in the chat for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, this question comes from Tim Schreffler. He says, if you could create a Star Wars character, what would you make? If you could create a Star Wars, okay, what would you make? That's pretty broad. But if you could create a Star Wars, if you could create a Star Wars character and stick it in the universe, assuming maybe for you to give life to, what would it be?
I don't know. I had a lot of fun playing AP5, so I might go down the road of trying to create an interesting droid.
The singing droid.
Well, that was only one episode. James.
Yeah, I know. And it took him being out in the zero gravity of space to inspire him to start performing. But I think if AP5 put together a backup band and hit the road, we could be talking international tour here. I'd be happy to manage it for you I'd be the road manager.
You never know. I mean, I've often talked of the AP5 Christmas album, and that's there's
you put that out in the universe. We might have to bring back the old holiday special for that.
Hey, I got to say, with Broadway coming back, they just announced today that there's going to be a Karate Kid musical. We've already seen Harry Potter cross onto the stage. We've seen Lord of the Rings cross over onto the stage. You never know. Star Wars musical, not that crazy, not that far off. I think it's closer than ever. So maybe AP5. Certainly,
it could happen. You never know. This is we're in uncharted waters here with all these musicals. Whether it's Young Frankenstein, or whatever being made into a
Shrek,
into a Broadway musical. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So I might go down the road of droid for creating an original character. Although there's so many things to choose from, it's hard to really pinpoint anything.
Here's one from Miles Morgan. He says, if you could bring an animated character that you have played to live action, what would you most want to play?
Like an animated character from Star Wars?
Yeah. If Stephen could bring an animated character he has played to live action, who would he want to play?
I think probably the most fun would be Meaver Gascon.
Yeah?
Gascon. So what, they'd have to shrink you down a bit, right? You know, a little
well, I'm just
sleight of hand with the camera work.
There's a CG version of it on, working with live action actors. That's the way I would see it. But
no CG, nothing. I could see you doing this practical effects, just like Gumby from SNL. I'm Gaskin, damn it! And then you have the green face with the felt thing around you. That would be great. I like that low tech.
It'd be kind of like the way they did Darby O'Gill and the Little People, where you have the little guys,
Yes.
They're all across to the other end of the sound stage, and the full-size people are right up close to the camera, and you're blowing out the electrical grid in Burbank because you got to use so much light to make it work. So
Here's
forced perspective.
Speaking of AP5, here's a question from Diana Orr. She's asking, was it in any way based on Alan Rickman? We were just talking about Alan Rickman as Snape. Was Alan Rickman, did he figure into your AP5 character at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the way that worked, is that they sent out the audition for that particular character, and unlike they would ordinarily do with a Star Wars audition, they let you know this is a Star Wars audition because they were saying this is going to be the counterpart to Chopper. So they had mentioned that they saw the two of them like the Statler and Waldorf of the Star Wars universe, two kind of grumpy sort of, they don't like anybody. So they had given a few references of how they wanted it played. And I gave them, I think, like 4 different things to choose from. And then, almost on a lark, the dialogue that they had sent me for the audition was really sort of confrontational and antagonistic between AP5 and Chopper, even more so than it ended up being in the show. And I thought, you know what? This really reminds me of Hans Gruber in Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard, sure.
John McClane. Just being kind of like sarcastic and being very full of himself and sure of himself. And so I thought, okay, this will just be fun. They're never going to use it for anything, right? So just as, for fun, I laid down the audition of the Alan Rickman prototype as Hans Gruber. And, a couple weeks later or whatever, I was working on the Disney show, The 7D, which was being done at the same studio where they did Rebels. And I ran into Dave Filoni in the kitchen. And he said, "Hey, yeah, we're real happy to have you on board as the character of AP5." And I said, "Oh, that's great." And then I thought, which guy did you end up using? Which audition? Because I'm thinking, which voice am I going to do?
Right.
He said, "Oh, yeah, he's doing the whole the Alan Rickman thing that you sent in." I'm like, "Oh, goodness."
Yeah, nice.
I love that he recognized
it.
it.
There we go.
That's awesome.
You knew right away. Yeah, perfect.
Very cool.
Perfect.
Stephen, thank you so much for calling in. I mean, we've had you on a couple of times with our after shows, and you've been so great to jump in and be part of the chat. We have such an awesome group of listeners that join us for these live shows, and I know they appreciate it. We appreciate it. We appreciate your friendship, and always being able to give us that little peek behind the curtain of what goes on behind the scenes of these shows, and you mean a lot to us, so thank you so much.
Well, I love talking to you guys, and I'm also really happy that you guys got Dee Baker on for the final after show.
Oh, that was a lot of fun.
For the Bad Batch.
He's the best.
Dee's done such an incredible job with that. But yeah, I'm always happy to, I love talking to you guys. And Jason, once again, happy birthday. I guess it's tomorrow, actually.
It's
right?
tomorrow, yeah. See, you know even more than my
tomorrow.
mom. My own mother was wishing me happy birthday today. Hey, Stephen Stanton remembered, Mom.
And she was there when it happened.
Yeah, right.
She's the only one who remembers.
So thanks again to you, and love to you and the whole clan there, Dutch and Miss Kathy and everybody. Thanks so much.
I will. And Dutch tried to leave you a message on your phone. It didn't. It ended up going haywire. So if you hear something that doesn't make any sense there, that's from Dutch.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
It's from Dutch.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
All right, let's grab a couple more. We'll just get to a couple more calls here before we wrap it up. Let's go. We got a first-time caller. Wow, he's on the road. We got a guy driving truck in Nebraska. This is Troy calling in. Hey, Troy.
Hi, Jimmy. Happy birthday, Jason.
Hey, thank you, man. Appreciate it. Jimmy Mack was giving you the universal signal there to blow your horn. You know, when you were a kid and you were driving. Hey,
there it is.
There it is. Thank you, good buddy.
Awesome, dude.
What's your 1020, good buddy? This is the Mac man with the swankster. And we're checking in here. We're out on the highways and byways of America.
There you go.
He's been watching Convoy too much, I think.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit. Smokey and the Bandit.
I apologize if there's a lot of background noise.
Don't apologize, man.
That's what we want. We want to be out on the road with you, my friend. What are we hauling? What are we
hauling there, good buddy?
Gasoline and diesel.
Wow. Well, be careful. No smoking in the cab, okay? That's my
definitely
advice
not.
to
No,
you.
that's one thing I don't do.
Okay. All right.
I had a whole bunch of questions lined up, but Steve stole a bunch of them.
Oh.
Thanks, Steve.
That guy.
No,
he can make it up to me by telling you about his libation collection. So.
Oh. Yeah.
that was a question I wanted to ask Jason was what was in the rocks glass and what do you prefer?
Well, I am a bourbon fan, and right now I've got a little. I've got 1776 from what is this? This is James and Pepper, 1776, 100 proof. 100 proof.
Oh, delicious. Delicious stuff.
And I'm not
Good
even
choice.
cutting it. I'm not even cutting it with any ice. So. But you
That's
know
his
what?
birthday.
You only turn 44 once, right?
Yes.
There you go. Yeah. I too am an original trilogy generation. So.
I barely made it. I
but
barely
I wanted-
count, but I think they accept me into the club a little bit.
I wanted to call and talk about John Favreau's connection to R2-D2 and characters like R2-D2, like Grogu also. I think Grogu is like this generation's R2-D2 because I've always had a special connection to R2-D2 as well, and I believe it's because I'm not trying to take away the magic or anything of this answer to why he's got a connection to R2-D2, but personally, it's because R2-D2 doesn't speak. He makes noise. So in order for him to communicate, I have to imagine what he's saying. And so that's why I have a connection to him, because it's personal on that level. I'm inferring what R2-D2 is saying. And I think a lot of it the same thing has to do with Grogu not speaking. We all kind of infer on a personal level, what he's trying to convey to the other characters.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the things that makes him so endearing to the fans, because Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni understand making a personal connection to certain characters. And I think being able to infer what we believe that character is trying to convey gives us that special connection to those characters that are lifelong connections. And they just do a fantastic job.
Boy, I think that's
character development for Star Wars.
That's a really cool way to describe why we do feel such a kinship with those characters, because it's almost we have to participate in it in a way. You have to read into it, and you're sort of interpreting those beeps and boops, or those coos and squeals, or whatever it is in the case of Grogu, and that sort of personalizes it in a way. We all might have our own version of okay, a great example of this is when 3PO says, "Watch your language." We all have our own version of what R2 really is saying to 3PO, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
And
Yeah, you know what? There was a point that Filoni brought up when Grogu meets R2. He wanted it to resemble when Wicket approached R2 during the celebration after the destruction of the Death Star.
Yeah.
And he walks up to R2 and sort of almost tries to look into R2 a little bit. And R2 turns on him and Wicket jumps back a little and they start dancing. Yeah, Filoni wanted Grogu's first meeting with R2 to resemble that. And I pick up shades of that as I watch it.
And with the conversations that you guys have been talking about, I start thinking about maybe I personally don't want Grogu to speak in the next season.
Right.
Because it might take away that magic. I think it would be really neat if we find out that he's a mute, that he can't speak. So he'll have to focus his powers to communicate through telepathy, and then the other characters, we will understand what Grogu's trying to say through the other characters by their responses. I just think that would be kind of neat.
Troy, have you thought about the idea that maybe we've, at least in terms of the Mandalorian, maybe seen the last of Grogu, Baby Yoda? There was a little bit of a allusion to the fact that maybe this is it.
Yeah, well, there's just rumors about him being in Mando, or there's just a couple scenes or a couple episodes, and then I'm just hearing rumors of the third season being the last for the Mando.
That's lighting up the chat.
For a storyline.
Yep, that's lighting up the chat. I don't know, Jim, if you saw any stories like that today, but there are people saying that there's rumors flying around the web that season 3 is it for the Mandalorian. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest.
No, neither would I.
Yeah, neither would I. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I think that would be a good idea because that would allow us to continue other stories and just maybe have the Mando show up as a side character or as help in some other episode in some other show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that. Look, I mean,
maybe just be a rumor.
I hate to bring it down to the dollars and cents, but there's a lot of equity in that Baby Yoda. I don't think the character is going anywhere, but his story might be told in other mediums, might be told in other shows, things like that.
Yeah, I agree.
But hey, Troy, thanks so much, man. Good. God bless you, and thanks for calling in. And wish you all the best there on the road. So
yes,
take
definitely.
care of yourself.
And be sure to watch your back door, and we'll catch you on the flip-flop. See you on your return trip.
All
Got that, good buddy?
I want to hit a couple super chats here. We've got N64 Rescue says, I'm sure you get asked a lot, but how did you guys first meet? I think he might be referring to Jimmy Mack and myself. So we'll give you the quick version. Is that I was doing another Star Wars podcast called The Force Cast, and I think we were into just the first couple of months and of doing it, and I was doing it with a guy I worked with at the day job, Pete, and got an email from the folks we were working for saying, hey, we've got some interest from this radio guy out of Chicago, and he's done a lot of really cool stuff, and he's interviewed a lot of Star Wars celebrities, and are you what do you think? And I thought, oh my God, this guy, I mean, this guy's got real experience. I mean, he's a pro, he's a radio guy. And I always looked up to people that were on the radio. I love radio. I thought, oh crap.
That was your first mistake.
Yeah. I thought, oh crap, this guy's
that was
coming.
Your first mistake, good buddy.
This guy's coming for my job. I mean, I just started. I'm being canceled already. I'm being thrown off. And hey, one thing led to another. We started using a lot of Jimmy Mac's amazing stuff, and then he started editing the show for us, which was incredible, and then became a real advisor on the show, just tightening the screws, as he would call it, with what the other co-hosts and I were doing. We actually didn't meet until Star Wars Celebration 4 in L.A.,
Yeah.
And we'd worked
about half a year.
Yeah,
working together before
working
we
together,
met.
and then we met, and he just nonstop made me laugh the entire weekend. I never stopped laughing that first
Always
weekend.
a goal. Always a goal. Yeah, once
And,
I realized you were a good audience, then I sunk my teeth into it. But it was interesting because I had just discovered podcasting and was always pretty snooty about it. But this was still the very, very earliest days of podcasting. We're talking 2006.
Yeah.
And I just kind of fell in love with the show, and I was a big fan, and I can hear what you guys were trying to do, and I thought I could help push you to that goal, and that's all I really wanted to do. And I knew that, Jason, you would initially feel that I was trying to claim some turf or something. I knew I was going to get that pushback from you guys, but all I really wanted to do was make the show that I felt like you wanted it to be, and I wanted the show to exceed and succeed. And so then one thing led to another, and here we are, 15 years later, as of September 1st. September 1st is the 15th anniversary of Jason's very first Star Wars podcast. My first Star Wars podcast happened on December 25th of that year. Christmas Day was when my first.
Oh, was that when
Star
the first
Wars
stocking
podcast
stuffer
show.
came out? Was that what your
That
first
was
one
no, it was a Galaxy of Music.
Galaxy of Music? Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Tribute to Ula.
Femi Taylor.
And so Femi Taylor, she's amazing, and that was my debut. But I think I'd been doing stuff on the show before that. But that was the first time my voice actually went out on a podcast. Was December 25th, 2006.
Yeah.
And then Pete Nadel was part of the show back then, and then in summer of 2008, he wanted to step back, and I tried to convince Jason to do the show as a solo act, and then Jason was like, "Well, why don't you just sit down on a show with me or something?" And so I did that and never left.
Yeah, right.
Much to the chagrin of many, I never left. I was the guest
hardly.
that never left, and here we are all these years later.
The guest that
and,
never
with-
left.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you don't know is Jim was our first guest interview. I was interviewing him, and he
the interview
never left.
continues.
Right, it's still
all
going
these months and years later, the interview continues.
It's so
but
funny.
it's been a gas, and we've had
Yeah.
a great time
Oh,
doing
my
this,
gosh.
meeting all of you guys, and doing these shows. It's been a blessing for me, quite honestly.
It's so crazy when you go on your Facebook feed and it's like, they show you those pictures like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and Facebook and all that's been around long enough now where it's like, wow, who is that kid? And I keep seeing pictures of us from those early, C2E2s and the first couple of celebrations and all of that. It's fun. All right, here's Lewis Tully. Thanks for the super chat. Mando doesn't suffer from the mystery box technique. For those that don't know, Jim, you've been awfully critical of J.J. Abrams' mystery box, which is sort of a storytelling trope that he's incorporated into a lot of his projects.
It's a fabrication. It's not even real storytelling. It's almost a gamble every time he does it. And it, in my opinion, rarely pays off. I think it's a terrible, terrible technique to create a mystery that lacks substance. It's just creating questions that don't have answers. And in the corporate environment of Hollywood these days, it's the recipe for disaster is what.
Boy, that's so true. So true because
there's just too many cooks in the kitchen now.
Yep.
You can't get away with doing stuff like that.
Yeah, it's so homogenized now. There's very little risk taking. Everything is played very safe. And it's funny because Star Wars. You look at the original film and you think, wow, it's so mainstream now, and everybody just accepts it, and it's part of popular culture. But it was weird and wild at the time when it came out. It was counterculture in some ways. It was wacky. Just listen to some of George's contemporaries as they saw some of the rough cuts. They like, what is he doing? This is insane. So it certainly was not. It may seem like the safe play now, but it wasn't at the time by any stretch.
No. Hey, I have a few things I wanted to say before we sign off. I wanted to talk about this this Boba Fett situation where you have the ship. It's not Slave One anymore. It's being called Fire Spray, and I've seen a lot of weird opinions online from people.
Well, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I missed this. Where was it confirmed that it's called Fire Spray now?
Our friend James Burns did it.
I didn't see this.
Well, the Fire Spray is a new thing.
Okay.
That came as the result of a comic where they're doing these variant covers, and you're supposed to collect them all for the War of the Bounty Hunter series. So they have all these different covers featuring bounty hunters with their starships. You have Bosk with his starship, the Hound's Tooth. It's been called that since going back to the Shadows of the Empire days of the mid-'90s. Hound's Tooth. You have IG-88 with the IG-1000. I think that's his ship. And that's another one that goes back to Shadows of the Universe. But one ship that goes back all the way to Empire Strikes Back, Slave One, has now been renamed Fire Spray. And Fire Spray is the type of starship it's always been designated. A Fire Spray blast boat is what they call the Slave One, the type of ship. Much like the Millennium Falcon is a Carillion freighter YT.
So this Fire Spray term has been around for a while. So
yes.
So okay.
Yes.
So Slave One has been known throughout canon as being a fire spray.
Yes. Yes, a Fire Spray. And so now apparently they want to appropriate that name, Fire Spray, for Slave One because somebody got offended by the usage of the word slave in a kid's toy made by Lego, despite the fact that there's been 40 plus years of Slave One toys. And I've seen a lot of weird reaction to this. It all started when James Burns was giving he was part of a Lego fan media junket where they were showing off some of their upcoming product. And the way the interview went down was the Lego representative said, and this is from The Mandalorian. It's Boba Fett's starship. And then the other Lego guy says, we're not calling it Slave One anymore. This is Boba Fett's starship. James Burns says, okay, why are we dropping the Slave One name? And the Lego representative says, everyone is. It's probably not something which has been announced publicly, but it's just something that Disney doesn't want to use anymore. Slave One. So Slave One's going by the wayside. And I've seen all kind of weird reaction to people like freaking out about Slave One. We talked about this with Mark Anthony Austin a couple weeks ago. I'm not saying he's one of the guys freaking out about it, but he sure isn't happy about it. And we discussed it with him. And then I've seen the other side of the coin where people are being weird apologists for the Lego Corporation and the Disney Corporation. I don't know why any fan would ever want to fall on the lightsaber to protect corporate matters and stuff in this nature. Or maybe those people who are making excuses about it were genuinely offended by the use of the word slave in a Star Wars toy name. However, I've not heard about it at all in the last 45 years or however long the Slave One's been around, 40 years. Nobody's ever raised an issue or an eyebrow about it, but here we are in polarizing, sensitive, overly sensitive times where just, if you stop using the name Slave One, then I don't know what changes that's going to make, but I think it's damaging to the integrity of Star Wars and these names. I mean, you brought it up. What are they going to do? Change the Death Star to the Life Star? Mark Anthony Austin said, what are we going to do? Change the name of the entire franchise to Star Friends? Yeah, it's those questions might sound absurd, but I think this changing of the Slave One name is also just as absurd. And it's just it's people jumping at shadows right now is what it is, and it doesn't change anything or except for the name of the starship. So if that's what's happening now, for the people who are overreacting, saying how dare they do this. When you look around at other things online, like on StarWars.com, they have a data bank filled with information about characters, planets, and yes, starships. And no, they haven't changed the name of the Slave One there. It still exists as a in-universe name. But maybe they just haven't gotten around to it yet. Remember, they didn't even put anything on the Lucasfilm website about Dave Filoni's promotion until a year after he received the promotion. So, they might just be behind the times as far as that goes. But I just think it sets a dangerous precedent for established names, canon, storytelling in general. And we all saw it start with the Leia in the metal bikini, I mean, there was reaction about that 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And so knee-jerk reaction means no more Leia in the metal bikini, Slave Leia merchandise anymore. And that was among the most popular merchandise out there for Star Wars at the time. So I don't know what people think. I do have an in-universe way to make this kind of a reality. If you remember, in Star Wars The Clone Wars, Boba Fett lost his ship. It was he had Aurra Singh stole it. Yeah. And Ahsoka jumped on a wing. She chopped the wing off as the thing was going into flight. I think Aurra bailed. She evacuated from the ship, and then the ship crashed on the planet Florum, where Hondo Ohnaka hangs out. Hondo retrieved the Slave One, and we've never seen Boba Fett reacquire that ship. Now, I think he does in the novel Dark Disciple, which was based on unused Clone Wars scripts. It was about Asajj Ventress and stuff. And Boba does have the Slave One in that novel. And that novel does take place toward the end of the Clone Wars. So there are actual canon references to Boba retrieving the Slave One. But here's how I shift it around, okay? Boba never got the Slave One back from Florum. Once Hondo retrieved it, Boba never got it back. He got another ship, though, and that's the ship Fire Spray. That's how you can fix it in canon if you want to go that far. I think it's jumping through a lot of hoops for nothing really, but it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Do you have any thoughts on this, Jason? Do any of our callers have any thoughts on this before we wrap up the show?
Well, I don't know. We're just throwing this out. Let me look and see if anyone wanted to tackle this one. I don't see anybody. I mean, look, there's a lot of support for what you're saying in the chat. I agree. I don't like this idea that we're going to assume that someone is or someone's are going to be offended by something that's been around for such a long time. And it's look, this isn't the real world here. We're talking about a galaxy far, far away. We're talking about a fairy tale. We're talking about a story. I mean, we knew as kids that the empire was built upon slavery, as empires and totalitarian governments and systems of governance often are. When we get to the point that we're afraid of words, this is where what it strikes me. We're afraid of words. Just because the ship is called the Slave One doesn't mean that we're glorifying, accepting, or in any way condoning slavery. Or glorifying it. It's such a leap to think that. So for people to and big company, and this is the problem. If we want to get down to brass tacks, one of the problems with large corporations taking over entertainment is the fact that they can be hurt in other areas of their revenue stream. So they don't want to do anything within their entertainment arm to potentially offend somebody who's going to get 12, 15, 25 people on Twitter to, create some sort of boycott. And then of course the media grabs that and they go, oh, look at this, where there's smoke, there's fire. They just want to avoid it all. So this isn't about Lego or anybody taking some kind of moral stance. It's about them trying to fend off the swarm of angry bees that shows up when somebody's, just all of a sudden becomes aware of something that's been around for a long time and hasn't really bothered anybody. It's so, I don't know, to me it's like prescribing a cure for which there is no disease. I can't believe anybody would make the leap that this is in any way offensive. The word means things. I mean, look, you have to go back. Look, Slavs, Yugoslavia, the word slave comes from the Slavic people. I mean, it's just insanity.
Well, yeah, but
how far back do you want to go?
Modern day terminology, it means something totally different. I don't mean to sugarcoat the word slave, but I mean also I don't mean to, be jumping at shadows either.
Right.
In this case, I mean, the word exists. This is just the equivalent of book burning. I mean, essentially, in my opinion. It's not going to change anything, and fans are always going to call it Slave One, and you're going to hear me emphatically call it Slave One just because of this, there's all kind of different terms that are jumping in my head, and none of them seem appropriate to say on a microphone right now. So, but I will say this. Robot Chicken knew this was going to happen years ago. If you listen to this little audio clip featuring Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian and Boba Fett from one of the Robot Chicken Star Wars specials.
I gotta say, Boba, this is one beauty of a ship. Not crazy about the name, though.
So Robot Chicken knew that the storm was coming. And that's pretty amazing piece of audio right there.
I totally forgot about that. I totally forgot about that. Wow. Oh, man. What a fun show tonight. I mean, Stephen Stanton showing up was great. All the calls were amazing. We didn't get to everybody, so sorry if you were on hold waiting. But big thank you to all of our callers and everybody listening and joining us live for this show. Look, just because there's not a new Star Wars TV series going on right now doesn't mean that we're saying goodbye to these live shows. Tonight is a great example of that. We love doing them. We think you guys enjoy them as well. So we'll be back. We'll be back with more of this. Huge thanks to everybody for your birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. You guys have made the last 15 birthdays of mine extra special. It's always great. So thank you very much. If you like more Rebel Force Radio, go to rebelforceradio.com. Please subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to have those subscriptions. They really help out the Rebel Force Radio efforts here. And if your podcatcher, we're available wherever you can get your podcasts, whether you get them from Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, of course. It doesn't matter. We just love to have you listening. That's the main thing. Listen, spread the word. Let your friends know. If they're Star Wars fans, let them know that you listen to this Star Wars podcast. Also, don't forget about our YouTube channel. That's how we're broadcasting to you right now, as a matter of fact. So please subscribe. It costs nothing to subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the notification bell so that you'll get notified when we decide to do these live shows. You'll also get notified via our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the regular suspects. So you guys always provide great conversation with your calls and your emails and your chats. So we'll see you next time. Jimmy Mac, do you have any final thoughts about what we came here to talk about? The Star Wars Gallery or Disney Plus Gallery, The Mandalorian Season 2 finale, whatever this episode was called.
I don't think anyone said chut tonight. So is that a Bad Batch thing? Is that a Bad Batch thing only? I don't think I heard a single chut tonight.
I thought I said chut.
Because
I thought so.
Well, that's one thing, but I mean, I'm talking about the caller. So we're too late for the T-shirts now. That ship is coming.
No. The chut has just begun. Chut has just begun.
Chut has jumped the shark, apparently. No, yeah, we're going to be chut-chutting here for years to come, ladies and gentlemen. So don't kid yourselves. But yes, I want to hear more chut-chuts from the audience. But no, like this Disney Gallery thing was just fantastic because we all love that Luke Skywalker moment. I heard some people complaining, why did they wait so long before putting out this special? That episode aired 9 months ago and stuff. And my rationale was back then the same as it is now. The magician doesn't want to show you how the trick is done right after he performs it.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think it was worth the wait. I think it was an appropriate amount of time to let us wrap our heads around the return of Luke Skywalker and the Mandalorian as fans and what that means to us before we start getting bogged down by all the technical details and everything. And I just loved hearing Mark speak so fondly about returning as Luke in this show after hearing him speak rather unfondly about his experiences in Episode 8, which I felt was pretty damaging, actually, at the time when he was doing all that stuff. And I think even Mark might have realized that he could have gone a little too far with that, because if you don't have the confidence of Luke Skywalker in a Star Wars film, then something's seriously wrong here. But all I heard from Mark Hamill in this special was confidence, and more confidence, along with heaping praise and speaking real, being very real about it, too. I love the fact that this special wasn't dumbed down for, like how Disney productions can be. We spoke about the behind the attraction special, how they're hyper edited for short attention spans, how they have kind of snarky commentary going on, and the sound bites are chopped up into a handful of seconds, when there's more meat on those bones. I think this Mandalorian special gave us a lot of the meat on the bones. And that's because Jon Favreau was the executive producer of this special, just like he was the executive producer of the series on a whole, and creator and writer and director of some episodes, too. Jon Favreau is the total package. I love the guy. Somebody said to me, why doesn't Favreau do Chef 2? What's he waiting for? That film should get... I said, listen, we don't need Jon Favreau getting distracted by anything. We need him making Star Wars and more Star Wars. And if The Mandalorian Season 3 is indeed the final season of that show, I hope that John will come up with something else he can do in Star Wars, because the combination of Favreau and Filoni works. It really, really
How about
works.
CEO of Lucasfilm? There's a job I'd like him to take.
But see, again, that could get him bogged down with a bunch of non-creative crap.
Yeah.
And the great thing about a guy like Jon Favreau is he has enough corporate clout, enough Hollywood industry clout to be able to take down the corporate stooges who want to stand in his way. He knows how to do it. He knows how to get the job done. And he knows, and I'll say it again, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Jon Favreau knows more about what Star Wars fans want than anyone else who's ever worked on Star Wars, including George Lucas. Favreau knows more about what the fans want.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll take it. You want to look at me with disdain and go, fan service? Well, fine. If you're too good for it, then step aside. The rest of us Star Wars fans will enjoy the ride. Oh,
well
baby who's not in this episode? Who do I say? I mean, I didn't have a sign off for the Mandalorian.
I don't remember.
So
I don't remember. It's been a while.
I'll just say, is there a Mandalorian type? Who is that one punk guy from, I'll say Frog Lady, not in this episode. There you go. Frog Lady, not in this episode. Oh, God.
All right.
We're
Thanks,
really
Tyler, for screening all of our calls. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yep. Love
with you, brother.
Yeah, love having you, and you help us out a lot. Thanks, buddy. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you next week. More Rebel Force Radio coming your way. Until next time, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
the Force will be with you
Always.
Always.
Always.